But yeah, please refer to me as Jay unless you want to tell me off, then it's Jason.
If only to act like your mother. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to another Louise Dawson webinar. I'm really excited today to be joined by Berna Bouwer from GEMS Corporate Head Office and Jay Giddens from ReadSpeaker. So thank you very much for joining us. Let's move through. So today we're going to be talking about text-to-speech software and how that helps within the classroom. Now this will be recorded and it will be hosted on YouTube. So please feel free to join and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Louise Inclusion, because not only is this webinar here, we have over 300 videos now, lots of webinars from different partners that we work with, and you can have a lot of free learning and information from the YouTube channel. So do subscribe, we would appreciate it. So as I said, we have Jason Giddens from ReadSpeaker and we have Berna Bouwer from GEMS Corporate Head Office. They're very happy to be here this afternoon sharing time with you. Now, one of the reasons that I work with ReadSpeaker is because their integration into websites is amazing, and Jay's going to talk about that for you a little bit. But even our local education authority, which is KHDA, if you go to their website in Arabic, it's on the left, and in English, it's on the right. If you click the accessibility button, you will have the ReadSpeaker option come up. And by using this menu and these options, you can listen to the content of the page by clicking play on ReadSpeaker. And this really helps accessibility of the website around using technology to help everybody. It's not just about students in the classroom, as you will find today. So accessibility, really important part of what the work that we do, is all about helping people with neurodiversity, physical disabilities, visual impairments, reading difficulties, learning differences such as dyslexia, allowing them access to written content through listening. The support for neurodiverse learners helps people to process the information. It helps you to do that auditorially, not just visually. This can aid focus, but it also aids comprehension. If we talk a lot about cognitive load, and if you're having to use your vision to find the words, break up the words, remember the words, put them all together, string them together and get some comprehension out of it, this can really reduce cognitive load, which supports everybody, especially those learners and people with ADHD, autism, or low literacy levels. So language learning is also supported. So if we have our second language young people, it's important to me for learning and the pronunciation of new words and new language, intonation, it supports context, so many different ways that it helps our second language young people working in English. If you enable children to, and young people and adults, if you enable us to have access to that content and that context and the comprehension and understanding, this increases engagement and retention. It supports us with memory, understanding, especially when those texts are long or very complex. When we have that ability to listen to our work, not just to read it, it also allows us time to multitask. So we can make notes, we can be doing other things, it improves productivity and flexibility. And all of that is around the universal design that we're looking for when we're looking for teaching or learning or working. It isn't just in the classroom, it is across all aspects of our life. Multiple means of representation, which is what the universal design and equity in education is all about, means that we have access for all. And these tools, these strategies are absolutely necessary for some. For some, you are unable to function without it. So those with visual impairment, etc. However, they are useful for all. So that whole term, necessary for some, useful for all, is what we are looking for this afternoon. And Jay and Berna are going to talk to you in different contexts. One about how a large corporate organization who is managing thousands of children's education, along with Jay, who's going to give us some more information about that. At the end, we're going to have a question and answer. So if you've got any questions at all, please do put them into the chat. We will be picking them up. If it's appropriate, I'll drop them into the conversation. If not, we will bring it all together at the end with a conversation. You know me, I like everybody to have part of the conversation, be part of the conversation and the solutions that we have. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Jason, who is going to speak a little bit about himself and do the self-introduction so that I don't embarrass him going on about how brilliant he is and how brilliant the work he's doing is. So Jay, welcome. How are you?
That's a big introduction, that is. How do I follow that? So actually, I'm gonna start with something. You just called me Jason. So Jason's actually my name, to be fair. But at school, I couldn't spell Jason. So I just used to put a J, which is why I always call myself Jay. So most people know me as Jay. Only ever get called Jason when I'm getting told off. So now you all know that secret. So Louise is what I'm going to talk to you about ReadSpeaker a little bit later on, but I've just kind of alluded to it a little bit. I want to start with something personal to me. So when I was a student, many years ago, there was no online exams, there was no laptops, there was no assistive technology. It was just me, a pen, and a blank piece of paper. And I can remember it just like it was yesterday. I remember that feeling of sitting in an exam room, my heart pounding through my chest. And all I'm thinking about, because I didn't know I was dyslexic then, but all I was thinking about was the amount of red crosses that are going to appear on my page after I'd finished that exam. So it's the fear of making a mistake, the fear of being judged, fear of being left behind. And it's crushing as a kid. It's soul destroying. I knew the answers, they were there, they were in my head, but getting them from there to my fingers was a no-go. So that was the battle then. But fast forward to today, we've now got amazing technology, makes a difference in the classroom, makes a difference to people's lives. But the truth is there are still people, students, struggling. Not just students, teachers as well. Instead of waiting for paper to be handed out now, students are sitting around waiting while teachers are trying to mask and work with different products, different tools, multiple pieces of software. So it's just as stressful for the student back then as it was for me, back then. And it's also really stressful for the teachers as well. So for me, inclusion isn't just about having technology, it's about making sure the technology works seamlessly for everyone in the classroom. So that's a little bit about me and a bit about what I'm going to go into today. But yeah, please refer to me as Jay unless you want to tell me off, then it's Jason.
If only to act like your mother. Let's hope you don't do anything wrong. Okay, and so the next, I'd like to introduce you to Berna. I'm not even going to start telling you how amazing Berna is. So Berna, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Berna is then going to talk on a little bit about how the company are using text-to-speech, but also about her experiences of inclusion and the reason why she does what she does. Carry on, Berna.
Thank you, Louise. I love inclusion. I am quite passionate about the whole inclusion piece. And the reason behind it is not only am I, like Jay, a child of the 70s who was not diagnosed with ADHD as I should have been, but also we know the struggle. A very good friend of mine, David Bartram, always says that a child spends about 1 million minutes in school from the age of 3 to the age of 18. And 1 million minutes is a lot of minutes if you can't do what people want from you. If you don't quite fit in, if you don't belong, and if you feel like you're not enough. So the reason behind my being is to make sure that every child feels like they belong and they can. In my day job, I am the corporate head of inclusion for GEM, so I look after all 48 schools in the Middle East and their inclusion piece. We have around about 144,000 students on our books, just in the UAE and Qatar, some schools in Egypt. We have some schools in the UK and so forth. I am also a parent, a mum of a child with cerebral palsy, who cannot write and uses assistive technology extensively in his daily life as a student at university. I'm also an education psychologist, but in heart, I'm a teacher who loves to have children love what they do and how they learn. Text-to-speech is important to me because when we talk about inclusion, people often have the idea that it's these interventions, these magical interventions that we do, and we take children out of class and we fix it, and then we send them back in and everything's great. And the expectation is that we do something. But actually, I have found in almost 30 years of experience that the most impactful types of inclusion and the most impactful transformative tools are the ones that are just there, that are just embedded in everything we do. And it's almost like it becomes part of our normal way of working. And I view that quiet confidence that a child has. And as a teacher, you see it. You see the moment when a child starts going from over that bridge from, I can't because I cannot write this down, as Jay said, something between the message in my brain and the message to my fingers are not quite working. But I see these types of tools are actually tools that make that bridge possible for our children. And they walk over this bridge of confidence and suddenly they think, oh, I can show what I know. And when we move towards actually thinking about inclusion as a tool that we use to make people belong, to make people feel like they're good enough, we are actually getting inclusion right. I think for me, the next thing is it's about the freedom. And this is why I picked the image of a bridge, because freedom is often something that our students who have inclusive needs or have learning needs don't have. We call them in the UAE students of determination because they have to do so much more work. They have to work so much harder than your neurotypical child to get to the same point. And when we have these apps and these tools that can actually help them express their ideas without that barrier of, I don't know how to spell this. How many times do we change a sentence because we can't spell the word? I see smiles. You definitely know what I'm talking about. Or sometimes when we read something and we don't quite understand how it's pronounced. Being South African, people laugh at my pronunciation all the time. You know, I visit Wales and people laugh because I say every single letter, which is apparently not supposed to be said. The point is that these tools gives us the bridge to actually go from it. And when our students, and even us, when we drive and the GPS lady tells us, go left next, then you actually know what to expect because your brain takes that information in a different way than it would if you were just reading it, because now you see it, you hear it, and you might experience it as well. For me, it's also inclusion in action, because what it does is it makes it such part of our normal day of part of working. And if teachers model this and teachers show that they're also using it, then it becomes something that our children feel comfortable in. Now, if Louise goes to the next slide, I will show you how we actually use it in GEMS. So we use it in all different ways. And we always say to parents, even when children are little, our students are so used to getting those visual input about, you know, how information is stored. So they're so quick on looking at all these YouTube clips, all these TikTok stuff and the Snapchat videos and all those things, that our children forget how to listen. Sometimes our children listen, but they don't hear and the information doesn't go there. So actually combining something like text to speech and speech to text in your daily life helps children to learn how to listen without knowing they're learning how to listen. So it's actually quite a trick that we also tell parents to use is when you tell a child, when you're cooking, for instance, say, now I'm adding the rice, now I'm adding the water, because the visual with the sound actually makes the message stick. Now, in our schools and in our homes, we use tablets, we use smartphones, and there are so many different apps. And this is something that Jay spoke about earlier. Teachers are often so busy swapping between apps, trying to make it work for all the different children in our classes. You know, we've got e-readers, we have reading pens, we have sometimes even LSA sitting in the classroom explaining the message. We have so many things embedded in our daily lives already that uses this. And how do we simplify that, not only for the teaching profession, but also for our students? The worst thing as a parent, and those of you who are parents will know this, is when you have got so many apps to go into as a parent to check your child's homework, for instance, we stop doing it. So making it easier, and this is something that we're doing in GEMS, is making it easier by streamlining 1 or 2 apps that we use, or 1 or 2 tools that we teach the children how to use. We apply them in the lessons so the children see them in action, but also we share that at home. Because we often forget that the most learning happens in the school day, absolutely. But the cementing of that learning, the sticking of that learning, the stickiness of that learning happens at home. Whether that happens when the child is having a conversation at the dining room table, or whether it happens in the car on the way home, or when it happens on a game when they're talking to a friend. That is when the stickiness of learning actually comes to life. Now, when we look at the big picture, is we are looking at access for all. In GEMS, our inclusion is all about access for all, so universal design for learning. As Louise said, having more ways than one to show it. I'm a math specialist, and I always say, I always used to teach the children, tiptoe. There is more than one way, tiptoe. And if we remember that every child can show, like they do in universal design, their knowledge and their understanding in a different way, we actually give them that bridge to have the access. It's no longer only expected to be writing. It's now, how do you show your learning? The most powerful conversations that you can have as a parent or as a teacher is with children, asking them, how do you show your learning best? I wish somebody asked me that when I was a teenager at school, because writing, like Jay, wasn't my best thing. But oh my gosh, if you got me talking, I can tell you a few things, because I know certain things. I don't know everything, but there's certain things that I could explain if you just gave me the opportunity to do so. You also have students who do not like talking. So having the option available that they can use text-to-speech should they want to listen to something or re-listen to something, slow it down, speed it up, change the accent, those types of things makes a difference. And if you are in a school like we have in Dubai, for instance, where you have 116 different nationalities, your language matters, your representation matters. So when there's a tool that actually slows down a piece of writing, and you can choose the accent, you can choose male, female voice, it changes the game for many of our young children. Then, of course, the next one, and that's the second principle that we base our technology, the technology we pick, apologies, in GEMS for inclusion, is the next one is all about agency, empowerment through agency. Thanks, Louise. And that agency is so that students can understand their own learning. Students must be able to tell you about what they are learning and why they choose a tool. They have to have options. They have to almost see the buffet and know how they learn best so that they can use it and apply it in their lives. And I'm just going to that change because it's such a game changer. And I'm going to tell you just a short little story about my son, Joshua. Now, my son, Joshua, was born in South Africa very prematurely and was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at a very young age. And we immediately did everything a mum and a dad would do. Went to OT and speech, and we had his eyes tested and had some surgeries and things like that. And very soon we realized that the muscle tone in his hands were not picking up. His prognosis wasn't very good. They told us he would never walk. Happy to report that he's actually jumping on a trampoline for GB in the able category at this stage at 19 years of age. But he's at university studying at Surrey University, accounting and finance. And that's only possible because there's a device that he uses in every single lecture that records his lectures, transcribes it for him, and mails it to his email. So although he understands, he cannot take the notes because the muscle tone is just not there. And it changed his outcome because if he did not have that, I can guarantee you that he would not have passed his GCSEs. He would not have passed his A-levels because that technology, he's a very, very shy child. So having another adult next to him, scribing for him was not going to be the right solution for Joshua. And even now at university, he has these access arrangements. So it changes the game for so many of our students. And as Jay said, if we had that in the 70s, so many more of our students would actually break through that barrier of confusion and of struggle, because imagine going to school every single day for 18 years and being told you do not fit the mold, you don't quite belong, you are not good enough. And these tools actually make it possible. I think the last thing I just want to say is when I think of speech to text and text to speech and these tools that actually are embedded in our daily lives now, it reminds me of the voice. You know, it gives every child the opportunity to have their voice heard, whether that's on speech to text or in writing, but it also helps us to transform the way that we expect. So it's not about lowering the bar. It's not about making the word work so easy that the child can write a sentence, a big fish swims in the water. It's about raising the expectation through putting the right tools in place so they can achieve those very, very high targets we want them to achieve, so that they can achieve their own personal goals and potential. I'm going to hand over to Jay. I think I spoke your ears off, so please, Jay, carry on.
Thanks, Berna. So I'd like to think that everybody here has some degree of understanding of what text-to-speech is. So what I don't want to do is go on and on and on about text-to-speech. What I want to try and do is paint a picture and a story from you about accessibility, about inclusion, and about the small things that you can do which help either dyslexics, second languages, ADHD, all the stuff that kind of Berna's alluded to, really. So accessibility and inclusion, really, particularly in international schools at the moment, inclusion isn't optional, it's essential. So International Schools Council data shows that international schools are increasingly seeing a steady rise in students with accessibility requirements. In most cases, that's English not being their first language. Okay. In the UAE, they are, to a certain degree, they're already doing evaluations of inclusion on a dedicated framework, right? So in the UAE, for example, inclusion isn't a nice to have. It's actually part of how a school is judged, which is all credit to them, to be fair. I think it's fantastic. But in my opinion, true inclusion goes way deeper than checklists. I've talked to you about myself. Berna's talked to you about herself as well. So it's about the child who struggles with reading, the child who fears the next Red Cross like me. It's the student learning a second language who's terrified of misunderstanding a word or the question and the word that's in that question. It's the teacher who's trying to support maybe 20 different learners, all with different needs, without the tools to do it properly. That's where technology, the company I work for is called ReadSpeaker, and that's where one of the products I'm going to sort of allude to today, TextAid, I use it every day in my day-to-day life. It comes in because I think, in my opinion, when accessibility is done right, not only does it reduce the stress for people like me and children and adults, it reduces it for teachers as well. Next slide, please. So some of the core features around building, what I would call true accessibility. So let's look at what makes TextAid stand out for a start. So highlighting for revision. We have schools and students in the UK where there are children with zero, and I mean zero accessibility or zero inclusion needs. They're using it purely as a revision tool. So the students can hear, process the text at the same time. So not only is that visual, it's auditory. So that's learning combined. So if you think about not just dyslexia, for example, if you think about EAL learners, think about how it would strengthen their comprehension and their pronunciation by not only just being able to see the word, being able to listen to it pronounced correctly. So we have a lot of students in the UK that use it as a revision tool. It's got translation and dictionary tools built into it. So these are powerful independence builders for people like me. So a student can translate a word instantly, check its meaning without breaking their workflow. There's nothing worse than having to click off something to go onto something else to find an answer that you want. I'll give you a great example of that. There's a school in Ireland, and if any of you have ever spoken to people with thick Irish accents, they talk really, really fast sometimes. And sometimes this particular gentleman was telling me, I just see it's a school which teaches students in Malaysia. He says, and I could just see them switching off because they weren't understanding what I was saying. So this particular school, The students actually use it to have the words translated so they can understand the words, he says, and you just see the light bulb go off. So dyslexic friendly fonts. So something as simple as that, being able to change the font into dyslexic font to increase fluency and reading fluency. Now, the big thing about it is it's a multi-device. So it's cloud-based, that's the first thing. It works any device, anywhere, in a classroom, at home. So think about a student in an international school being able to take their own product or have a product at school that they're working on, for example, then go home and log in on a different device, but still see what they've been working on. It is seamless. It can also be used in exams, which I'm going to talk about later as well. Next slide, please, Louise.
Okay, we have oh, no, we don't. I thought we had the video next. We don't. That's after this one. Carry on, Jay. Sorry.
So this is the big one for me. So this was, as I said to you at the beginning, my nemesis, exams. Exam is when everybody, not just students, teachers, stress levels are at an absolute peak, right? So think of this. I mentioned a teacher with 20 different needs. There may be text to speech, there may be translation, there may be some may need a dictionary but no internet. Others may need a secure reading environment with no external access. That probably requires 2 or 3 different software systems to do that, okay? So the teacher's pretty much juggling the whole time, switching between screens, trying to keep everything working, trying to keep everything compliant. The whole time the clock's ticking. What does that do? That's just, for the child or the student, that's complete stress. That's not inclusion. That's just utter chaos. So ReadSpeaker has something called exam mode built into it. So everything happens seamlessly within one product, within one interface. So teachers basically can group a student by a subject, they can group them by a need, they can apply the settings centrally, lock everything in before the exam modes. So it's calm, it's independent, teachers can focus on what they need to focus on while a student isn't stressed out before the exam, everyone's happy. So it's all well and good me kind of like talking to you about this, but what I've done is have one of my colleagues make a brief video. Now, the video itself is 8 minutes long, and I'm not one for overkill, so I'm not going to sit and make you go through that. What we've done is broke it down a little bit, but the video you will be able to watch the video in your own time. And actually, I totally advise you doing it because you'll see how much of a game changer this is. So there should be a video now, Louise, hopefully.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to press play. If Jay, could you give me a thumbs up that you've got sound and vision, hopefully? Yes?
Got vision. So what you can see here, you can see the teacher is going into the library, sharing the document. So they create the document and they then share the document with the individual. I mentioned it can be groups, so it's an exam, so he's selecting exam mode. He's going to give them what options they can choose, whether it be a calculator, a writing assistant. He'll set the time and the date of the exam. Now you can see groups of users. So it could be an individual, or it could be a group that he's going to send it to. So it might be a geography group. That would automatically go into the library for those users. Now you can see there, this is now from a student's. I've got a bit of the music there, you can hear that. So the students received it, click to go to my library, shared with me, and he's got a classical music list to go through. And there is the music quiz. Now, everything can be done within this. The student never leaves this place. They can annotate, they can write. In my case, I can put in, I don't understand this question. But so you can see the student there, they put the name in, they go through, and they basically answer the questions as they go through. It is a completely safe environment. It's JCQ approved. So that means that
composer wrote the famous tune for Elise, Ludwig van Beethoven. Johann Sebastian Bach, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky.
And there you go. So that's just a brief overview. That video is about 8 minutes long. So do watch it because it really shows you the difference, particularly for a student. You know, they're not going to get stressed out before the exam, but how easy it is for a teacher. And that brings me on to really something that I think we're seeing more and more of, which is teacher burnout. And that is, you know, it's quite. I did a bit of digging before this webinar to try and pull some facts and figures off. And really why. I'm not talking about UAE, I'm talking about global figures. So nearly 1 in 3 say they're considering leaving the profession, and fewer than 20% of those who are leaving are retiring. Most are walking away because of stress and workload. Some say they didn't get the technology they had was hindering them. I think a lot of teachers these days are given systems which are fragmented, unreliable, or either too complicated. You know, we're looking at things like they're having to log into a second platform, reset a password, troubleshoot during an exam, stress levels go up. But then what happens, that kind of gets passed back to the student as well, because if that happens in an exam, the student starts to panic as well. So it's all about simplifying the process, and that's what we've tried to do. Tried to make it so that it helps the teacher doesn't get stressed, the teacher doesn't get burnt out. And for me, investing in good technology isn't about helping students. It's also about keeping great teachers as well. It's all well and good as saying, well, let's help a student. Definitely, I'm all for that. I'm totally all in. But we need the teachers to stay. We need the teachers because it's the teachers that count as well. So they're worrying figures, but it is going up. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned to you about ReadSpeaker Text Aid being JCQ approved. So that gives full confidence, exam security and compliance. It provides translation, dictionary, text-to-speech tools for multilingual and EAL learners. It works on any device. I use it on my phone at the airport so I can see what gate my plane is at, because for me, letters and numbers combined, being on my own traveling, it's a living nightmare. It's got optical character recognition, so you can take a picture on your phone and it will read the text out to you. It gives continuity from school to home. Parents being able to see what their children are doing is also really important and part of the nurturing of child's development. It supports teachers through grouping, time savings. We're talking about 12 minutes per teacher, per student in an exam. 12 minutes. That's crazy. This is like so simple. It takes minutes to set up and that's it, it's done. It's not just a reading aid, it's an inclusive environment. This is technology doesn't just work for students, it works with them. Final slide. So my conclusion. So I spoke to you about me and I spoke about red crosses on my exam papers, the fear, the panic, feeling of being left behind. That is an inclusion, trust me, that's utter survival. It really is. ReadSpeaker Text Aid gives students something better. It gives them confidence to succeed, whether it's a child with dyslexia or a student learning their second language, or even a teacher trying to manage 20 different needs. The goal's the same. It really is. Calm, confidence, equality. When inclusion is invisible, when it's built in and not bolted on, everyone benefits. And that's what ReadSpeaker does, is helping schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Jay, that was brilliant. Thanks so much. I'm going to go off and look at the video in full as well, and we will include a link in that in the YouTube video. We'll put it in the comments at the bottom. Fabulous. Thanks very much. And Berna, thank you, especially for sharing your own personal journey. It does give meaning, we talk about case studies and it's your real life, but case studies and understanding how it really impacts children is so key to the journey. So what we're going to do now is go to some questions. Okay, I do have a question in the chat. So guys, you haven't prepared for this because this was a random one off the side. Okay, so Ramanta has said, if I understand correctly, each teacher and student gets a login. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you basically, the child or the student or the user has their own login. So absolutely. So a teacher has a login, it's their own individual license, and they carry it around with them wherever they go. We have schools which kind of say to the parents, well, you know, if you leave, you can keep the license. Take the license with you because we know how beneficial that is to the student. Taking away technology after they've been given it is one of the worst things you can do, in my opinion. I'm sure Berna will agree with that. You know, so yeah, it's an individual license. It's a portable license that you carry with you everywhere you go. So it's like a toolbox, basically. Yeah.
So does the student buy it or does the school buy it?
Can be either. We have cases where students have bought it because they want to use it as a revision tool or for accessibility requirement. We also do individual licenses and site licenses as well. And I don't know whether it's further in there, but if anybody signs up, we would give you a free pilot off this webinar. There's a code which I think is going to be sent out, and I think you get a couple of months free trial. So just try it. You've nothing to lose, and you'll really see the benefits.
Agreed. So in the text on one of the previous slides, we talked about JCQ. And for those teachers who are not working in JCQ, which is the UK exam boards, the Joint Council for Qualifications, and they are the people that manage all of our technology use and extra time and ReadSpeaker, all of our exam accommodations in our official board exams at the end of year 11 and year 13. So in those exams, some children who are multilingual are allowed to use a translation tool. They're not allowed to use a dictionary tool. We're not allowed to explain what the words mean, but we are allowed to use that direct translation. So I do think I know, Jay, maybe you can answer this for me. In ReadSpeaker, you can turn on or off the dictionary or the translation. Is that right?
Yeah, when it was really quick actually, but that functionality, when it's set up by the teacher, is either available
or not available.
Yeah, but it's, without overcomplicating it, it locks the system down. The student can't go anywhere. They can't go onto Google and try and get answers. They're locked within that environment.
That's amazing. And so the question was, do the translation dictionary tools get disabled for exam mode? And the answer would be it's optional. Teachers can choose that as they go in. And I noticed in the video where it says you can set the time and the date for when that exam is going to happen. So exams officers do have access to the papers. I think it's 30 minutes before the exams. So they are able to open them up, load them up onto the system and provide that time. But also don't forget, with exam access arrangements, it has to become normal way of working. So in the video it said about the tick boxes, you have to go over here, you have to click the button and choose the tick, and then you put the tick into your answer sheet. And that's why you can't just say we're going to use text to speech, you're going to use it in your exam today, here you go. The children have to use it, recommended more than 12 months before the final board exams, so that they are familiar with the tools, familiar with the access, and it doesn't disable them, it enables them. And speed and practice is the only way. That's what normal way of working is, practicing the accommodations to make the young people as successful as possible. So I have another question for you. How can text to speech be integrated into IEPs, individual education plans? These are the documents which we create for people of determination that help us to monitor and track progress, but also enable teachers to understand what children are allowed to use inside or outside of the classroom. So Berna, maybe I can throw this one at you. You're one of my IEP experts. How can teach text to speech, speech to text, how can accommodations be integrated into IEPs, please?
So we would usually use that as a strategy to support or a strategy to access. And what we would do is if it's a specific strategy for a specific child to meet a specific need, then you would be named on the IEP. But I always find that when we use it as a normal teaching tool, then you wouldn't have to include it in the IEP because it's access on entry, which means that you're basically ensuring that every child has access to it without having to actually name it. So you wouldn't say that there are computers in the classroom or they are there on an IEP, for instance, if every child has the access. But giving the child the opportunity to choose it or the teacher to use it as a strategy in a specific setting, then you would actually name it as a strategy in your on your IEP.
I also think if you're introducing it as a new tool and it specifically know that it's going to help, it could be used as one of the goals, especially for senior students. The goal
But then
could be
you it as a training.
absolutely
Training
learn how
in-
to open the software, learn how to use it against the tick box, learn how to, and so enabling the student access to the technology is step one, teaching them how to use it seamlessly and quickly is step two, and that can be an actual goal for a secondary student, which and sometimes those are the students we struggle with the most for goals because they're not having interventions, etc. So moving away now, this one will probably be for Jay, but Berna, jump in afterwards. Taking away the secondary students and the seniors who are doing it for using it for board exams, have you got any examples of where this may have been used with a younger student? So say under the age of 11, our young ones can struggle with technology, they can struggle with using a keyboard. Have you got any success stories or case studies for the younger group?
In short, yeah, that's a really great question, actually. What you just kind of alluded to it a little bit. We have a really great story from a school called Stafford Grammar School, and I'm happy to share the video. It's a young girl who was struggling. So this is an independent school, so a private school. You imagine the pressure this girl's under. Finds out she's dyslexic, and is her grades in just as she's starting to get from so age group 7 to 8, when it's really starting to kick in the education. She's really struggling. It's everything's falling to pieces. We supplied her with text aid, and there's a video, a beautiful, beautiful video that you can watch. I'm happy to share it with anybody. That's just one of the many stories. But it's a tearjerker, that one, because not only was her mum involved as well, it was a mum that initially reached out, but B, that young girl called B, she's flying now, and it's because of the portability. But you mentioned about carrying things through. This is one thing with this product which is great. It can be started from a younger age, so when they do move into secondary or grammar or high school, they kind of already started to learn the way the tool works and learn how to use it in a test situation, whether it be a mini quiz or whatever it might be. So when they do get into the high school scenario and they put into an exam mode, it becomes really fluent to them. And as you alluded to at the start, kids these days, they find their way around. I mean, there's been no chance for me, but yeah. So yeah, loads of stories. I can share anything you need. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it's about the adult that's working with the young people can enable it and model it for the young people way before they take over and become independent. You know, we don't just say, here's your clothes, go and get dressed. We model it, we show them, they're watching us get dressed, then we're practicing socks and clothes. Every single learning is through development, and you don't just say, here's a computer, off you go. You have to teach them touch typing, you have to teach them how to use the mouse, and I think it's all part of that process. If they see, and I know I can't tell you how many thousands observations I've done even just this year, but when there's a tech hitch in a classroom, it's the kids that sort it out. We don't need to be calling IT because the kids are going, Miss, you just need to click here, or you need to turn it off and on again. The children often, because they're watching it and they're seeing it, and they'll be watching other teachers use it, and they will then pick it up and learn from other children, other people using it. Modeling it can often be more learning than actually telling them to get on and use it. Berna, have you seen text to speech be successful in primary at all?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we often see it is where our children do have severe needs. Maybe they're nonverbal. And I always say nonverbal does not mean non-knowing. And we have seen, literally this morning, I was in a classroom in one of our schools where a child used speech to text to actually write a sentence, to put the sentence down. clicking on the words that they wanted to be because they can read it. And then this tool actually read it out loud for the child. And where he made a mistake in the sequence of the sentence, he actually realized because it sounded wrong, and he went back and he fixed it. So yes, there's huge opportunity for our youngsters to also, as I said, learn to listen again by using these tools. So yes, we have seen them.
And it's enabling that independence, isn't it? The independence of, it's not the teacher saying that sentence doesn't make sense, go back and check it. It's hearing for themselves, learning for themselves, and then having the tool to do it themselves when they're away from the classroom. And, you know, JCQ and the exam access arrangements, they have shifted from you will have an adult sat next to you reading, you will have an adult sat next to you scribing, you will have dependence on another person, which we then rip away when they go to university. Whereas these tools enable that independence. They, you know, you said, Jay, about moving from home to school and school to home and having access across their life, not just in the classroom. Sticking with exam access arrangements, and Berna or Jay, I don't know too much about IB examinations. So I do know that you can use technology in exams. I do know that there's an access and inclusion policy for that.
That's right.
And I
IB.
do know that you can, as long as it's documented and written in the reports and evidenced as a need. But I don't think so.
You have to
Berna,
apply
take with me on IB, go for that.
Yes, so you have to apply through the IBO for access arrangements like you would for the JCQ. And what we see most oftenly used is extra time in our IB schools in Dubai and reader pens.
Awesome.
Which is speech to text or text to speech.
But
it's also allowed in the Indian curriculum. Our schools have National Curriculum of England and Wales. We have the CBSE curriculum, the ICSE curriculum, the IB, as well as American curriculum through NIASC. And all of those exam boards actually allow it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You do have to apply for it, same as you do in the UK, and you do have to document it. You have to have evidence of need, evidence of normal way of working, and and practice makes perfect. Okay, that's awesome. What about MYP? The question is here about MYP as well. Now, I think that MYP, you can use it. You can just use it, right? I don't think you need to apply for it for MYP.
Yes, you can just use it. Remember, there is an exam at the end of MYP for those who will have to, but through the years leading up to the exam, you can just use it to make sure that the children know how to use it, can apply their knowledge, and can show their learning.
Awesome. This one's probably for you, Jay. Does it have compatibility with Arabic, reading, or listening? Speech? Yes. The answer is yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
again,
how
yes.
many languages? How many languages are you supporting? Do you know?
Crikey. It goes up all the time. There's 250 variants of the languages as well. So, you know, male, female, multiple male, females. And the big thing for me, because if you can understand, I use it a lot. So the big thing for me is the content of the voice and the way the voice sounds. There's nothing worse than listening to a voice and it sounds appalling. Or I mentioned being called Jason and Jay. It sounds like a newsreader or a teacher, and it's way too regimented. So our voices, we've got some really, really nice voices that are really relaxed. They're nice to listen to. You know, yes, it supports French. You've just seen that pop up. Yeah, there's multiple languages on there. But it's the quality of the voice. And that's something we really pride ourselves on. Our voices are ours, you know, and they're beautiful to listen to. That's the big thing.
We're all getting very good at identifying when AI is being used on YouTube videos as translation, aren't we? We're beginning to pick up those nuances in spoken speech, that's clever, which you can't replicate. A robot or a computer or technology cannot replicate that intonation and that however much it tries. Okay, so I've got no more questions in the chat, so I'm just going to go for this question that I came up with before the session. More and more, we are seeing text to speech and speech embedded into websites. So right at the beginning, I showed you how it's in KHJs. Berna, as a corporate lead for all of those schools across the Middle East, what we are looking for is for our companies to model this. Is it something that GEMS is looking at? Do you know about any other corporate groups? Are you seeing it more and more? Where does it sit in terms of accessibility of websites for schools, please?
It's a interesting piece of work, and I do see more and more companies actually doing it, and especially here in the Middle East, where Abu Dhabi and Dubai are going for autism friendly cities, and they are doing more and more to ensure that our websites are in line with European standards. And there are laws legislating these things in Europe. So there's a law that says that all websites have to be accessible to people with need, whether that's visual needs, hearing needs, or physical needs. So yes, there's a big piece of work going on, and I can see it more and more as you go onto newer websites where people are actually putting in that symbol that says, click here for accessibility arrangements to the website. So definitely, yes.
And I don't think we're ever going to be perfect, because what we know about needs is that every person is different and every person needs a different combination or not. And so it is really difficult to get it right across the board for everyone. But we don't necessarily want you to get it right. We just want you to start trying. Berna, is there some kind of website accessibility law that we were talking about earlier, right?
There is. There's laws governing this, and not in the Middle East at the moment, but we do try and it adhere to the European laws, and there are laws governing this. And you know what, in the end of the day, people with specific needs, all they want is they want to know that you thought of them when you did it. And offering a choice to say, if the writing is too small, or you want the colors to be dimmed because it's hurting your eyes because of sensory overload, or you want to be able to listen to this piece of text. And when we offer these things and it's offered to everyone, it doesn't make it a chore. It makes it part of accessibility. And I think that is where most of the companies are working towards at the moment.
My two favorite words at the moment: choice and voice. All right, not just the speech to text, but Jay, you were talking about something else on websites earlier, which it's gone out of my mind. But
there's a couple of things actually. There's something that's just popped into my head. There's a little story which I'll tell you in a second. But yeah, there's a couple of things to this website web reader product which I love. So first of all, think about the family which moves, take me to Cyprus, and they go onto a website and the website's all in Greek. I haven't got a chance, not a chance. So what does that do for a school? Well, that encourages a parent from a different language to go onto the school, translate the website into their own native language so they can read all about the school. What's that parent going to do if they can't read? They're going to go somewhere else, right? So that's the first thing. So that obviously not only encourages people to join the school, but of course it gets more students through the gates as well, because you're opening it up to everybody, full inclusion. The story I'm going to share with you, this is dead true. So here's an example of how having a web reader can open you up to so much more. So I won't say the name of the company. It's a very, very famous clothing brand, female clothing brand. And they once came onto a stand that I was exhibiting at. And the lady very glamorously approached me and said, "Oh, what is it you guys do?" And I said, "Well, we make words come alive." And she said, "Oh, yes, we don't need that. That's not for us." And her lanyard was very cleverly popped in her top pocket. And I always try to read, in my dyslexic mind, try to read people's lanyards. Couldn't quite read it, but as she glamorously threw away, it came out of her top pocket and it said the name of the clothing brand, right? Very famous ladies' clothing brand. And I went, "Wow, you work for, oh, my wife loves your," I said, "She's got 3 of your winter coats hanging in her wardrobe." "Oh," she says, "so she said, has she?" I said, "Yes, yes, yes." So there's only one problem though. So what's that? I said, "I can never buy anything for her." "Why?" I said, "Because I can't read your website." She stopped, looked at all the people that were with her entourage. She said, "Is this true?" I said, "Well, you're marketing COO, so half of your brain is marketing and half is sales, right?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, think about it like this. If I was to give you, say, 8% more business, would you take it?" She said, "Well, yeah, of course I could." "Well, there's between 8% and 10% of the population that can't read your website. So if the school has that for people can't read our website, how are they ever going to know what you're going to do? How are they ever going to know your success stories? How are they ever going to know about how well you've done with your exams, or how well your children do, or how good your teachers are if they can't read it. So that's a true story of an example of how it works. It opens it up for everybody, for everyone.
Yeah, it's so key, I think, because what we recognize, especially, in the global society that we're now living in most countries, is that historically, I would have probably said, well, if the parent can't read the website, then our school might not be the right place for that child because the language difference. But actually, what we recognize now is children are fluent in English. But parents are still our customer. It's parents that are looking at the websites. It's parents that are choosing the schools. It's parents that are paying the fees. And so the websites need to be accessible to parents, even if the children are fluent in English and can read and can write. And so it's not just about special needs, disability, neurodiversity. It's that whole complex weave of people out there in the universe. I think that's huge. So last month I was at the Accessibilities. We had a stand at the Accessibilities conference here in Dubai. It was phenomenal. And one of the people that came across the stand was profoundly vision impaired, so completely blind. And we sat and we talked, and it was a brilliant conversation. And his whole life, he looks at websites, and so companies can pay him to look at the website, being blind, using his software that he uses to access technology. And so if anyone's in Dubai, he charges 1,000 dirhams to go onto your website to see if it's accessible. And I'm like, this is the best 1,000 dirhams I'm going to spend this year, because, I have a website, I'm a company, and I need that to be accessible if I'm going to claim inclusion. And whilst I've been looking for somebody to do that, I wasn't able to find them. So if you are in a school and you do want to know if your site is accessible or not, let me know, and I'm more than happy to share his details. Don't go and look at my website yet; it's not been done. Okay. And I've got the ReadSpeaker plugin, and it will be up in the website within the next week before I get him to check if my site is accessible. So very, very important. So the last question, I'm hearing a lot of talk about exams. So we're talking about the board exams. CBSE and India, they have now made a lot of their exams a lot more accessible to young people. There's flexibility coming in all over the world. So I'm hearing talk about all exams going online, which on one hand thrills me, and on the other hand absolutely horrifies me. So Berna and Jay, do you think exams will ever go to everyone using online assessment? It's going to save a lot of trees. It's going to save a lot of postage. I can see the benefits. But what will the challenges be when that happens, if that happens? Jay, you're unmuted, so I'm going to take you first, and then I'm going to ask Berna to drop in at the end. Jay.
I mean, I'd be interested to hear Berna's thoughts on this, but for me, as neurodivergent, I think it's fantastic. However, I think about, if anyone's ever been to the UK, you think about some of the areas, the really deprived areas and deprived schools in the UK. I don't know how they're going to accommodate this. We're talking about thousands and thousands of pounds to buy devices to enable children to go on, which, here's me saying everybody, universal design for life, everybody, right? It's a good thing. I fear how it's going to be possible. Is this going to be knocked back to the parents, or parents going to have to be doing devices? So this is looking at it from a negative. From a positive, I think it's fantastic. I think it makes, for me, as a dyslexic, being sat in a classroom with 30 other children who are maybe not dyslexic, but are all sat on a device as well. No longer have I got that. I was called thick and dumb at school. I was made to stand in a bin. No longer have I got that label on my head. It's been removed, because all of a sudden, I'm the cool kid with the tech. Everybody else is the same now. So there's positives and negatives. Do I think it will ever happen? I hope it does, but it's got to be done right, I think.
I think access to technology, access to internet, okay, not all of access to consistent power. Okay, so I know as an as someone who's led exam provision for nearly 100 children every year, making sure that those devices, because they have to be plugged in, they cannot run on their batteries because batteries run out. You have to access to technology, an internet connection, which isn't going to fail you halfway through the exam. So there's that element, which did the tech element really worries me. Berna, do you have any experience or thoughts on whether this will happen and what would that look like?
It's an interesting question because when we saw what happened during COVID, a lot of students actually went onto devices and it was very successful. But what we did see was that a lot of our students who think better with a pen in their hands struggled more. So I would go back to the whole thing that it is available on the laptop, but you have the paper-based copies. When we do standardized assessment, and as you know, Louise, we do these every year in Dubai. So every single child in the UAE does the CAT 4 and they do the NGRTs and they do all of these assessments and it's all online. And what we actually see is it brings a disadvantage to some of our students. So I think that human component in the room, should it ever happen, would be important. But also having the option to write if that is your best way of working. The other thing is as well is what Jay said about the cost, and because there's also rules around these things. So you would know exam laptop, a child can't bring their own device. So you're actually doubling up at devices as well. And then you also have the other issue of areas like Africa and even South America, where these things aren't readily available, but they do write IGCSEs in some of these countries. So what I think it will happen is there will be the option to write it. As we saw, all children are now able and allowed to use technology during the exams to actually write their exam papers on a device. You don't have to apply for that anymore through the JCQ. So I think it might be something like a hybrid model that is coming. I do think that we are moving away from paper-based. So should it ever happen that everything is just on the computer, on an online assessment, I think they would offer the option to speak your answers and not type, because that is also a barrier to some children's learning.
It just comes all back to this: one size does not fit all. You've got to have choice and you've got to have voice. So this exam system whereby everybody has to use pen and paper, we have to make accommodations. So some can use laptops, some can use readers, some can use technology. And so if we swap to another, I'm just thinking of the day when everyone's using laptops, but we then have special needs as you have to use pen. That's like a complete flip of the narrative, right? Is that the typical kids get to be the weird ones. That's a flip in the narrative. So I've got no more questions on there, but is there anything else, Berna or Jay, that has slipped into your mind that we have run over? We're over by 2 minutes. So if it's meaningful and useful, please unmute and drop it in. If not, I am going to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for everybody for coming. Do subscribe to YouTube. As I said, this will be up there in the next day or two, and we have other webinars from all of our other partners, which are really useful. If you found this useful, you're going to find those useful. We have WhatsApp groups in the UAE, which we then have live face-to-face network meetings. We've got one in Abu Dhabi tomorrow, if you're around. We've got EAL and English coming up, and we've got Wellbeing coming up, and we've got Gifted and Talented at the end of November. So WhatsApp us, join the community, join the conversation, and then get involved with some of the live face-to-face network meetings. All of the events, every webinar I do, every training session, all of the partner events. We've got a whole Mighty Writer 6-month training program going on. All of our events are on louisedawson.com/events, and all of our partners like ReadSpeaker, if you're interested in more information, they've all got their own individual pages. So if you're in Abu Dhabi, I'll see you tomorrow at 9. On the 31st, Elkland have got 5 sessions on communication, speech and language support for teachers to improve communication in the classroom. Those 5 sessions are running through to January 26th, all for free, guys. Every Wednesday we have Widget Wednesday, that's your symbols and communication. Mighty Writer in the middle of a 6-month program of free CPD for learning support assistance. Again, all of the videos are on the YouTube channel, or will be when they're edited. And we do have a literacy event in Abu Dhabi coming up in, I think that's in November. guests, the 3-day Global Education Show is the 12th, 13th, 14th of November. I will be on stage with Berna and Philippa Raithmell talking a bit more about technology and the use of. It's definitely a hot topic at the moment. And after guests on the 14th, we've got a Partners Day where everybody will be coming along here. Free coffee, free cake, free come and talk to people. We've got UHQ coming, Flash Academy coming, and lots more on our partner days. I think I just said that Elkland was free for those 5 sessions, and I do apologise. I was wrong. Paul has just put it in the chat that it's £460. I can't even do the conversion on that, but it is all on the website, so I'm sorry about that. But there is a free Elkland webinar on the YouTube channel, so I'm giving you a bit for free and throwing in something else if you want to do further information. And all that's left is for me to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving your time. Thank you for everything you do for every single student, parent, teacher, senior leader, everyone that you're supporting in the community. If you have experienced additional needs as a young person or even as an adult, if you're facing those barriers, I'm sorry, it shouldn't still be happening, but it is still happening. And the only way we can change it is to keep fighting and keep being loud, keep preaching the preach, and stay true to the cause. Inclusion is about everyone, not just about those with special needs. So thank you very much. Do join us again. Take care. Speak soon. Love you loads. And goodbye.